What is up again, YouTube? Brody once more, showing you guys how I produced the song My Name is the Endless Night by WICCA Springs Eternal. This song, very sick, very fun, excited to get into it. I just filmed the video for how I mixed I Know the Raven, and I think this is a fun one to go off of after that, because they're very like opposite approaches of mixing in a way, where I Know the Raven was such a simple stripped down song, and the point was to make each individual part as big as possible. This song is a bit more dense, a bit more going on, and that like wall of sound is kind of what makes this one feel as big as it does. And with that being said, I guess we'll get right into it. This one was, let's see here, starts as usual with a respace going on. On my end, not too much processing, just a little bit of sidechain compression and some EQ. Add our drums, which on each of the drums, I did a little bit of like EQing, some soothe on the hi-hat to kind of get rid of some of that like sharpness at the like peak of it. On the drum bus, I'm doing some distorting and saturation. So this is how it would sound raw. And I used Radiator just to kind of clip it a little bit more, make this song a little bit messier. I felt like this song shouldn't be super clean and like pristine. I felt like it should have more grit to it. I kind of darkened everything a little bit off of that same concept. Added some decapitator, blended in a little bit just for another color of distortion to stylize it a little bit. And again, some dark cutting. I found that especially once I started mixing the vocals in, that I wanted the drums to be a bit darker and out of the way, more like low endy. From here we add our synths. Really cool layers. These are all WICCA's synths that he recorded. I believe Juno was probably the main one that he used. Let's see here. Honestly, not too many synth layers, but they're big sounding. This main pluck goes on the whole time, which I love the sound of. Kind of like a plucky super saw type thing. Very big, somewhat like trancey. It's kind of goes on like that for pretty much the whole song. It's like a nice like anchor for the whole thing. And then at the bigger parts of the song, we have this detuned lead come in. And I'll show the individual parts. This one panned hard left. This one, like an octave higher, panned hard right. Just to kind of give some space. Since this part's so big, I wanted the song to kind of open up panning wise and feel a lot wider at this moment. And then we have these, which are already panned. These are a little grittier. They sound like they ran through some distortion before being sent to me. Let's go through the processing on each of them. It looks like, honestly, with the synths here, I was kind of doing more at first and then wound up deciding that keeping them raw was the best. I find sometimes synths like this are similar to an electric, like a distorted guitar mixing wise, where they take up a lot of frequency spectrum, a lot of mid-range, a lot of harsh sounds. And if you're soloed or if you're mixing them out of context, it's easy to like process the harshness out of it because it sounds better without it. But then you put it in the context of the mix and you realize that harshness is what the sound needed and what it was giving to the song. So that's kind of what was going on here. I decided I didn't need all of that. Let's see, a bunch of soothe and reverb and cleaned it up, but then kind of killed the vibe. So instead, I realized instead of all of the EQing I did, I just needed to turn the volume down a bit. And then I did this little EQ thing to give it some more mid-range. On these, nothing going on. On the full bus of the synths, I'm doing a little bit of soothe, just for the high mids, like the harshness. Some radiator, just for some tube grit. I do that all the time. Sending it to a reverb, just to kind of give it a little more space. And let's see, that's it for the beat. Let's see what's going on with my entire beat bus. Cool. So on the entire bus of like all of the instrumental tracks, I have my soothe sidechain to the vocals. That I do this a lot, but I'll show it again. It is set to only it carves out where the vocal is taking space only when it's happening. So you can see that cutting just where the singing is. And that's a trick I like to do to let the vocals or whatever it is take up the space it needs and have but then the beat can as well. It's not like I'm just doing an EQ cut out of the beat for the vocals to sit, leaving the beat sounding smaller and thinner. It lets the beat still have all the weight that it wants to have, and it only just ducks out of the way when the vocals come in. And it's a lot more targeted than like a multi-band compression or a sidechain. So I have that, and then I'm using this JST clip. I have it all the way on 0. I have not turned it up at all, but even when it's turned all the way down, it still adds like that brick wall limiting and will soft clip anything that goes above 0. And it just kind of adds like a little bit of grit, a little bit of clipping. Really subtle, but I find that it helps. And then from there, we move to our vocal, which has a bit more going on layer-wise in this song. We have our main vocal here.
Misery has company, I'm back. The lone one has come home at last. Dark angel revealed once again. The spelling that I worked on is cast. Dark aura intact.
And this vocal chain is pretty similar to what I use for Venti Iced Americano. I am using the TubeTech CL1B as my main compressor.
Mystery has come to spread its wings, a slippery and soft singing beam.
So what the gain reduction's looking like, my settings,
complexity and sadness,
like 5-to-1 ratio, kind of fast, but even still, it's pretty transparent. And I have it like 75%, so like 25% of it is still going through totally uncompressed. Before that, I have a little bit of multi-band compression going on.
Come home at last, Dark Angel revealed once again. The spelling that I worked on is cast, Dark aura intact.
This 1K area is really helpful to cut out like any like headiness of the vocals. This is kind of where mud would be. This is like proximity effect basically. So if a vocal gets too low or they get too close to the microphone and it adds more like low end, that kind of cuts that out. Simple EQ, some de-essing.
Mystery has come to spread its wings, a slippery and soft singing beam.
A lot of S sounds in this, so I wanted to use that. Also, with how like I kind of wanted to make it a little grittier, a little more lo-fi and de-essing, as long as you're not overdoing it. De-essing a little more is a nice way to add that. A little more EQ, just some balancing. AFX exciter to do some brightening.
The silence extending its hand, complexity
really subtle.
And sadness it brings, the shadow is me.
But just like makes it a little more upfront. Again, our favorite radiator. At really subtle settings, I feel like this just like adds a bit of body.
Misery has company, I'm back. The lone one
I'm hardly going over 0 dB. I'm hardly like really clipping. It's just like color.
The spelling that I worked on is cast, dark.
Some micro shift subtly for some stereo width Turn it off.
Misery has company, I'm back.
So that's totally mono.
Come home at last. Archangel revealed once again.
And that just like adds a little bit of side information. Doesn't sound like a reverb. It just sounds like the person's talking and like vibrating the room that they're in. So it sounds a little more natural to the ear. I find that like an entirely mono signal sounds alien to me. Like nothing will ever sound like that in real life. Everything will have like a little bit of a sound of a room, even if it's a dead room. I have some more de-essing, just need a little more.
Mystery has come to spread its wings, a slipper.
Then some soothe at the end.
It's a slippery and soft singing being, a silent.
From there, on our like group for our main, just more EQ and de-essing. I'm grouping them all through this LA3A.
The silence extending its hand, complexity and sadness it brings.
Not much gain reduction, but it's kind of gluing when all these layers come in. Because aside from this, we have a bunch of doubles.
Misery has company, I'm back.
A little bit darker.
Right through the valley, but don't try to chase, it's the way that
some octaves layered.
Come home at last, Archangel revealed once again the spelling that I worked on is cast, dark or.
And the vocal chain for all these is the same. The only difference is some I'm making a little bit darker EQ wise. Some of the mics are different. So all of the vocals on this EP were recorded with 2 microphones and a like a condenser and a ribbon microphone, and then a third take that was one of them reamped through a Princeton like reverb. And they all just have different tonal qualities to them. I chose the brighter mic for the lead vocal.
I'm back. The lone one has come home at last.
And then this Coles is really nice for the background vocals because it's just a little bit darker, a little bit deeper.
Misery has company, I'm back. The lone one has come home at last. Archangel revealed one.
Kind of just naturally puts itself as a supporting role to the other microphone. Then there's these like glitchy parts in the interlude. You can hear it there. Using too much processing there. Hold on. I'll turn off some of my mastering chain. So yeah, I'm just taking like a higher octave layer, really verbing it out, throwing it out in the back, just to have something going on during that section. I'm using Portal and RC20 to do that. I need to log into my splice. I sometimes leave Wi-Fi and it makes me have to re-log in, but it's just adding some reverb and like textural delay stuff. And then RC20 kind of giving me a telephone effect and a little bit of extra lo-fi-ness. Yeah, and from there we go to, I said the third way that the vocals were recorded was reamping it through a Fender Princeton reverb. And that's what it sounds like here. And this was kind of the main reverb sound for a lot of the vocals. Really ghostly, like spring reverb kind of sound to it. And then all the vocals are going through a little bit of Valhalla reverb and primal tap as my delay with like a ping pong kind of setting going on to get some stereo width. But I tried to make those be more supporting role for this as the reverb. Then we have our Vox doubles.
Come home at last, Archangel revealed once again the spelling that I worked on is cast, dark aura intact. Mystery has come.
The mic that I used for the lead vocals,
The lone one has come home at last, Archangel.
I didn't process it all aside from what's happening on the entire bus. I just left them pretty raw. And then the Coles, like the darker one, I processed similarly. But again, no compression. I wanted these to be a little bit more raw underneath. Then we got that amp going on. in general. I just wanted these to be like a little bit less tight, a little looser, a little bit more raw, and like supporting role darker. So like I wanted to make sure that these weren't heard rather than felt. Like it doesn't sound like there's a vocal double, it just sounds like the lead vocal is stronger. And that was my goal with mixing these.
Come home at last, Archangel revealed once again the spelling that I worked on his cast.
Just to punch in, ad lib.
Take you there, baby.
Let's see here. Got our harmonies. Kind of same philosophy with the harmonies as the doubles.
The magical whisper that creeps through the window.
Then they get really big towards the end.
Hold on to romance.
Then there's one more that comes in all the way at the end. This part's cool. Everything just really builds up.
When I saw the other side, I know there's a doorway. I know where the secrets are.
And I have these all panned out different ways, just to make it the section sound bigger and make sure nothing's competing. And yeah, that is essentially it. That's all the sections that make up this song. Mastering wise, it's my typical chain of some tape emulation, a Fairchild emulation, just running it through it for color, using isotope. Just for a little bit of EQ, I got a dynamic EQ on the high end. Widening it, some tape and limiting. Redundant, but I like how it sounds. A little bit of EQ. Slight amount of soothe. It's hardly taking a dB out. I can't show it right now, but it just kind of is some smoothing. Oxford inflator, just kind of like add some loudness to this. Then Pro L2 is my last limiter. Which actually, since I did not master these, Will Yip mastered these, I kept on my master bus, which I guess would be considered my mix bus. I just kind of, in my workflow, combined the two. Kept on everything but the limiters. So I turned off Pro L2, I turned off isotope, and exported it like that. That way the color of my master, like I don't want to say master because that's wrong, but the color of my mix bus was still there going into mastering. But yeah, essentially that's it. That's how I mixed this. That is how this whole song came together. Very glad to be a part of this one. I don't know. These are sick. Stoked to be a part of this EP. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, like I always say, feel free to comment below or DM me on Instagram. And I would love to talk shop about this kind of stuff. Appreciate you. Thanks for getting this far. Thank you for supporting. It's how I mixed. My name is The Endless Night by WICCA. Thank you, and peace out.